Welcome to the Instant Impact Podcast. Oh my gosh, I have one of my favorite people. This guest today has become one of my favorite people in a short amount of time. And she's on the show today. And I cannot tell you what a powerful conversation this is. If you are ready to scale up your business, maybe you are looking to get to your first 6 figures or multiple 6 figures or 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, you want to listen to this interview. So if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. My guest today is Elizabeth Hartke. And if you're not familiar with Elizabeth, she is a serial entrepreneur. She runs 2 different businesses. She had built her business, one of her businesses, to 7 figures by the age of 30, and now runs a multiple 7-figure empire. And she's so passionate about helping impact-driven brands scale and build their influence, their income, get more time back in their day. And if you haven't yet listened to my interview on her podcast, Scaling Up, you can go check that out. I was super honored to go on the podcast for episode 71. So definitely go check that out if you want to hear our conversation there. But I have just grown to love this woman and to have so much respect and appreciation for how she runs her business, how she does things. And I had to bring her on the show to talk about how she has scaled and done what she's done. And one of the things that I most admire is that even though she's built a really, really financially successful business, she's done it all with a focus on her family. So she and her husband live on this beautiful 12-acre dream farm in Wisconsin, and they make time for their family and prioritize that in the midst of also running this empire. So when I brought her on the show and had the conversation with her, I really wanted to find out, how did she scale to the size of the business that she now runs while also keeping her sanity and having time for family? And so we talk a lot about that. She also shares her top tips for time management and delegation. How do you get more time back in your day as you grow and scale your business? How do you know what team members to bring on? And she actually has some really unique advice that you don't hear a whole lot when it comes to team and delegation. So I think you're going to find that super valuable. We also talk about how she does her content. If you follow her on Instagram or on her blog, she has beautiful content. She shares from the heart. It's so impactful. She's got a huge online following. And so I wanted to find out, how do you do your content? How do you come up with these great ideas? And so she talks about her whole content strategy and breaks that down into detail. You're going to get so many ideas for how you can incorporate some of these strategies and tips to really grow and scale your own business. And so you can apply all of this whether you are early on in your business or whether you are farther along and you're looking to scale to the next level, or maybe you're in sales and you're just trying to figure out, hey, how do I grow and scale my revenue? How do I start to bring on an assistant or somebody to help me? There's so much here that you can apply regardless of where you are in business, and I know you are going to love the conversation. So with that, please enjoy. Definitely follow Elizabeth online. Let her know that you found her on this podcast and let her know that you appreciate what she shared. And let's go ahead and get into it and learn from the one and only Elizabeth Hartke. All right, Elizabeth, I have been so looking forward to this interview for so long. And like I mentioned to you this morning, just even in prepping for the interview and going through everything that you've accomplished, you are such an inspiration, sister. So excited to have you on the show to help just share your insights on how we can scale our businesses and keep our sanity while we do it as well. So welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me on. I am so pumped to be here, and my guests are still buzzing about the episode that you did on our podcast. So I'm excited to hopefully return the favor.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know you will. I know there's going to be so much value here. And even just in your own personal backstory, I mean, reading about some of what you've done, I know you retired your husband by age 25. You guys have built a 7-figure business by age 30 together. So clearly you're doing something right. And so definitely want to hear about how you did it and and kind of what some of the backstory is there. And I'll tell you too, there was something on your website that stood out to me, where you give, I think this is the entrepreneurial dream. And for so many of us, when we go into business for ourselves, we have this vision of what life is going to be like, and then it ends up being totally different. And on your website, you say you can have an incredibly successful business that makes an epic impact and generational wealth while still slowly sipping coffee with your other half and being present for your babies. So it's like, I'm reading that, I'm like, heck yeah, how do I do that? How is that possible? And I know that you've done that for yourself. So tell us about your backstory and kind of how you've accomplished these goals, and then what led you to getting really passionate about helping other people do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always kind of had like this heart for entrepreneurship since I was a little kid, because I witnessed it. You know, my parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, almost everybody was a small business owner, an entrepreneur. And that was kind of just what I knew. You know, it was the norm. The people in my life weren't going off to a 9 to 5 with a long commute and unable to be present for certain things in my life. I loved the fact that my mother was always there to be able to cook dinner, and we all ate dinner together as a family. And my parents were always at the events at my school or on the sidelines at our ball games for me and my brother. And that was just, I think I took it for granted as a kid, but as I got older, I realized that not all kids had that. You know, this was a huge blessing, and I wanted that in my life. But one of the things I noticed about the sacrifice that came with being a small business owner for them was that even though they had the flexibility in their schedule to be present for specific things that were important to them, they had to pay for it later because they didn't have a scalable business model. And if they weren't working, they weren't earning, and they had to work to put food on the table. So, you know, I have memories of being a little kid, and my mom would put us to bed, and I would get up at, you know, whatever time, 11 or midnight, to go use the bathroom, and I'd see the dining room light on, and I'd poke my head in, and my mom would be sitting there with her briefcase and all her papers out on the table, making up for the time that she had spent with us. And to her, it was worth it because that was what she wanted. She wanted to be there for her kids. But I kept thinking, well, maybe, you know, maybe entrepreneurship isn't the right thing. Like, I don't want to have to do that late night work and make those sacrifices. I didn't know that there was a middle ground. I didn't know that there was a way that you could have both. So I pursued the conventional business model. I went to college, I got a degree, I went into corporate marketing. And I think, at least within the first 5 minutes of being in that cubicle, I knew that I was in the wrong place. Like, I felt like I was suffocating. And I know for some people it's you know, their zone of genius can thrive in that environment. For me, it was the total opposite. But I kept thinking, like, this is a secure paycheck. This is a stable business. This is an opportunity for me to climb a ladder. But I realized that ladder was up against the wrong building. Like, I wasn't climbing towards what I wanted. So my pursuit into entrepreneurship actually started when I got fed up enough in that corporate job and started seeing other people kind of doing it differently. And I tried to get a bunch of different businesses off the ground while working full time, and many of them flopped. And I actually started to dip my toes into the network marketing business model to start. This was probably about a decade ago. And unexpectedly, it was really just in pursuit of my health. At that point, I had gained 60 pounds. I was unhealthy. I had really low energy. I wasn't taking care of myself. And I just wanted to get healthy the right way. So that was how I kind of got introduced to a network marketing model, was utilizing their products as a customer. But that was the first time I learned about the concept of a passive income stream. That I could, if I put in the hard work and I put in the time, I could start to build a business while working full time that would eventually, not right away, compound and grow and allow me to earn without having to be physically working. And this was a new concept to me. And at the same time that I was growing that business, I was starting to realize that, okay, now I'm learning about this whole entrepreneurial thing. I have these skill sets in marketing. I have a passion for marketing. I love the psychology behind it. How can I take what I know in this corporate space and make it my own and serve people outside of corporate? So I kind of had two businesses being birthed around the same time about 10 years ago that ran alongside each other, and that I was able to scale both of them in a way that was honoring what I loved about what my parents did, what my grandparents did, what my aunts and uncles did, but doing it in a different way that could allow me to have that freedom that they didn't have, and that flexibility and that scalability, and then to teach other people how to do that too. Like, that is my lifeblood. I love seeing more entrepreneurs being able to pursue their mission and make their impact while still being at the dinner table with their kids, raising this next generation of leaders, and not having to pay for it later.
Oh my gosh. Amen. Amen. And I think part of what you said that's so important too is the fact that I think there's a lot of lessons, whether we're in a network marketing model or not, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that model that I know you help your clients apply to their businesses to help them scale. But just, oftentimes the dream of entrepreneurship is that we can go and be with our kids during a baseball game, or go take a break in the middle of the day. And then, like you said, seeing your mom working at midnight at that kitchen table, if you haven't planned strategically ahead of time to think about how is your business going to be scalable, you're still working a job in a lot of ways. And I know you talk about, for many entrepreneurs, that you see them either, it's like they're making great money, but their health is terrible and they don't even know their kids anymore, or they're really a slave to their jobs. And it's almost like they've gotten away from the original dream. How do you, when somebody comes to you and is in that position, I know there's a lot of different steps to get back there, but what are some of the first things that you have them do to really get back to that original dream and to start to create more freedom in their business?
I do it almost the same for every single client, whether they are a year into business and wanting to make sure that they do it right from there forward, or they're decades into running a successful company and generating millions of dollars. I don't care where you fall on the spectrum of metrics or successes based on numbers, because this is so foundational. Way too many people assume when they break into entrepreneurship or business, they do it, many of them, or at least the ones that are connecting with me and working with me, is typically because they want that freedom in some capacity. Like, they don't want to be confined to, a 9-to-5 job, want to be told what to do. They have a creative spirit. They want to make an impact, but they have bad math. Their math is assuming that time plus hustle or hard work is going to ultimately at some point equal freedom. And it's not true. You have to be strategic. So the first step that I do with everyone, even if, like I said, they are successful in terms of how much money they're generating, is we do a visionary exercise where, it's like the foundational pillar, first step, breaking into working with me, is making sure that the vision is so solid, but then it aligns with both the actions you're taking, the goals you're setting as kind of the stepping stones to get to the vision, and you're generating and creating a business model that supports that vision. Because, I have a client, for example, when he came to me and started working with me, he was bringing in $2 million profit a year, and he's a solo entrepreneur, very successful. People were hiring him, major corporations hiring him to bring him in to work with their high-level C-suite teams for leadership and growth. However, he could only earn even though he had an insanely high billable hour, he had to travel all over the world and fly to meet with his clients, and he was kind of at the demand of his clients. So he had this vision for freedom, and he really wanted to write books. That was like his big thing. I want to be an author. I want to sit under a tree and think and write books. But he couldn't close that gap, because what was allowing him to live that, the lifestyle that he was living, was keep working, keep working, keep working. So his vision was out of alignment. He had this vision of, being an author and having all this time to write these books and to think and relax and be with his family. But the business model he had created was not leading him towards that vision whatsoever. So we had to go back and kind of peel back the layers of the onion and say, okay, what is it that you want? What's this big picture? Let's look at it on a granular level too. What do you want your day-to-day look like to look like? When you wake up in the morning, how do you want to feel? What do you want your energy to be like? How do you want that time with your family to look? How much time each day do you actually want to be working? what do you want your views to be from wherever you're working? Because that tells you a lot about the bigger picture vision. A lot of times we'll just create a vision board or an idea of these big things that we want, whether it be for our business or for our lives, but we don't break it down to the granular. Like on that vision board, it might have, an image of us speaking on stages, but we don't think about the fact that speaking on stages means leaving our home to go speak on stages. And in our brain, we haven't made that connection, like, wait a minute, that's taking me away from my family. And I keep saying I want to be more present with my family. So there's something out of alignment there. Or, when you're picturing that really healthy, fit version of you, in that big vision, but every day you're doing nothing to honor that person, and you're doing nothing to ensure that that person, like who you are today, the gap from who you are today and where you want to be is being closed by the work that you're putting in. So we get super granular with it. I get pushback, especially from the men that I work with. Sometimes the successful ones, like, I'm not doing the vision board thing. I'm like, this is not vision board. This is super tactical. You are out of alignment. You are never going to be living the life that you feel called to live if you don't get this in order and figure out how to take these steps to get there. And the big piece that I think people mistake or do incorrectly in this process is they are asking the question, how, right? Like, what do I need to do in order to get there? But to me, that's the wrong question entirely. They need to be asking, who do I need to become to get to the vision? And even though this might not feel, if you're anything like me, like tactics, right? Like I'm just like, tell me the email list growth strategy. Tell me how to scale my business. Tell me how to create new offers. None of that matters. I used to hand over those answers to people and watch it fail time and time again because we weren't doing this process. Because you actually have to become a different version of yourself to achieve a different vision of your life, right? Because if you were already the person that was capable of achieving that big vision, that was capable of sustaining that big vision, you would likely already be living it. And we see it all the time. Like we want to get picked up right where we are, and we set a goal and we were like, let's fast track this thing. I want to get plopped right down into this goal with no personal or leadership growth in that process, which we've seen what that looks like. We've seen athletes at 18 years old, get drafted into the pros, make all this money and lose all of it because they hadn't grown into the person that was capable of sustaining that achievement. Or we see people win the lottery, like that's all they've ever wanted, all this money. They win it and they lose everything, including their relationships and their happiness and whatever, because they didn't grow into the person that was capable of that level of success. Mm-hmm. So the who do you need to become question can be broken down granularly too, because for my people who like tactics, this is a tactical process. This is saying, describe in detail that person that's capable of having those things that would be a part of your vision, being on the stages, having the beautiful home, having the well-adjusted kids and the healthy family and all the things that you dream about. Who do you need to be between now and then in order to ensure that that happens? Because likely that person that you're picturing, she's not sitting binging Netflix. She's not drinking wine every night. She's not abusing her body by eating junk and processed foods. She's probably not, even the way you think might have to change. Like if you wake up in a bad mood, or you revert to the negative when you get challenged by things, or if when you have imposter syndrome time and time again and tell yourself that you're not worthy or good enough, those are the tactical things that you actually have to put into practice to become this next level version of yourself in order to scale anything in your life, including your business.
I love that you said that, Elizabeth, because I think it's probably the last thing that most people are thinking about when they think about scaling. They're thinking about team, systems, funnel, right, ads, right? Like all the kind of the obvious stuff. But I love how you said that it is actually extremely tactical to look at who you need to become. Now, my question for you on that, because I can imagine somebody doing that exercise and saying, this person is radically different from who I am right now, and it could feel overwhelming. Mm-hmm. What do you do if you look at that description of that person and they're so different from who you are right now? How do you start to tackle that without feeling overwhelmed? Is it like one piece at a time, or how do you work with your clients to help them kind of get past that initial overwhelm and start and not stall and get paralyzed in it, but actually make progress in that direction?
The first thing I want to remind everybody is that it's not always about the destination. Even though we're saying like, who do you need to become? Where do you want to go? There are so many, even if it takes you 10 years to get there, 20 years to get there, however many years, there are so many wins that are going to happen between now and then that you need to celebrate. Little wins, big wins, everything. So if we're always just focused on the vision, and that's the only metric of success, if we get to this vision, if we become this perfect version of ourselves, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting till we get there, and that gap feels so, so big, it is too daunting. It's too overwhelming. But to me, it's a win if that version of you is a mom who's patient with her kids and has a great relationship with them. And the one thing that you shift over the next month is that you don't snap at your kids, or you don't pick up your phone and ignore them because you are telling them that something else is more important than them in that moment. And you just do that one thing to shift and be more present and be more patient. That's a major win. And you've already taken a big step towards that person. So you break it down into the smaller, more tangible things that you can control. It could be just the habits. Like, I mean, most of us spend way too much time scrolling social media mindlessly, right? Like, you can change that habit between today and tomorrow if you are willing to have the discipline to do it. And the thing that keeps you committed to that process is the vision. You always have to keep your eyes up just enough to keep sight of that vision, because if we drown in the day-to-day, not so sexy things that's required of us to scale both ourselves and our businesses, we're going to quit because it's not sexy and it sucks and we don't want to do it. And we're not making the progress that, we want to make. I start a new workout program and like, I'll start at 20 pounds overweight and I'll do one workout and look down and I'm like, wait, where are my abs? And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a process, so
Yep.
you can't be so focused on the results of the day to day. You got to be focused on the vision, and it makes that progress worthwhile. But I like to break it down to the things that I can control, my habits, even the way that I think. And sometimes it's like, I've struggled with things that have been rooted in my brain since childhood, literally, like they are drilled into the wiring of my brain. And I've gotten to walls in this process of becoming and said, I can't break through this one on my own. I've got to bring in help. So I've brought in help where I need it. In my health, it's been like, okay, I gotten to a certain place in my health journey, but now I need someone who's smarter than me and ahead of me in this process. So I'm going to hire somebody. The mindset stuff, like I've got this roadblock and these negative thoughts that seem to be creeping up that I've had my whole life. All right, maybe I got to work with a therapist, and being willing to call in the team or the support community in each area that is going to help you with that process. And maybe it's even just like in motherhood, for example, I lean on my mom and my aunts because they're people I trust and I admire them for how they've done their stuff in that category of life. So that's the category that I lean on them for. So being willing to ask for help when you need it too, so that you can step through that process.
Yeah, it's that piece is so critical. And it's funny, I shared this on my Instagram story like an hour ago. I'm getting hypnotized tonight for the first time, which I'm nervous about, but I'm excited about it too, because there's this one goal I've been going for that I keep like bumping up against, but I've been struggling to actually make it happen. And I know it's rooted to my thinking, and I've done the affirmation work. Like I've done everything I know how to do. And at a certain point it was like, okay, like my mentor has a hypnotist that she uses to help her really dig into the deeply ingrained beliefs, like you said, that you've had from childhood. And so I know there's some of that going on for me with this goal. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but like not being, yeah, I'll let you know. I'll fill you in afterwards. But yeah, like it'll be really interesting to see what happens from it, but just not having the ego to say, I've got to get this all figured out on my own, and knowing what your limits are. And the other thing that you said, I really like the way that you approach the vision exercise and vision boards. And I think there's a lot of similarities in how we do them. It's maybe some differences, but one of the things that I've been doing for about a year and a half now is like just a 90-day vision board. My vision board is only for the next 90 days. And it has a very, very concrete list of, it's got pictures of what are the things that I want to have in these next 90 days, but then it also has reminders of who do I need to be, what are the habits I need to start adopting, and it's having that really short focus that I find within 90 days where it's like the goal is it's far enough out that you can accomplish a fair amount in that time, but it's also short enough that it keeps you focused and it keeps you locked into the vision. So I think sometimes people get, we can create this vision board or this vision for our lives and kind of put it somewhere, and then it feels so out of reach that we don't take it seriously. So really, like, the dialing it in, the making it tactical, the looking at what are the habits that I can control, what's the support I need to bring in, and really being committed and making it a must. Like, what do I need to do? Who do I need to become in order to make this happen? So many good takeaways for me in what you shared there. So thank you for that. Gosh, there's so much I want to ask you too, just about time and scaling. I'm curious. I know one of the things that you help people with, and this is a little bit more on the tactical side, but it is building and scaling your team. And I think there's different people have different opinions on this, but I know you're such an expert in this. How do you know when it's time to start outsourcing and delegating something? Are there like certain triggers you look for in the business? Are you someone who says you should outsource before you feel like you're ready, or no? Like, I'm really curious to know your perspective, because I know that is such a big element of being able to scale.
Yeah, I think I have a couple different approaches, and a lot of it is just based on my own experiences of working with people and what I've done personally. I always put a disclaimer on everything saying, as an entrepreneur, you should be living beneath your means, and so that you can afford to do the things you need to do in your business sometimes. So that's just kind of this thought process. And you never want to outsource or hire to a point where it's going to stretch you so thin that you're putting yourself or your business at risk, or your family, or whatever it is. That's my personal approach. But at the same time, I like to outsource in a couple different areas. One, what takes up the most space in my brain? Like, if there's something that's haunting me, even though like, there were so many things in my business in the beginning that I was like, yeah, but that only takes me an hour a month, or that only takes me, a couple minutes each day. Like, I can do it better than that person. Like, whatever, you tell yourself the story, but the anticipation of having to do whatever that thing was multiple hours a week, because I was thinking about it all the time, and it was taking me out of my creative zone, and it was stressing me out. So those are great things to consider outsourcing, like that list of stuff that just takes up space in your brain. Yeah, maybe it's only taking you, it could be stuff not even in your business. Like, some of the first things I outsourced: laundry, food prep. Like, there were things in my home that I always felt like I'm falling short in, but it was taking up space during my workday. And same thing within the business. It's like, I could create my own graphics. I can do them pretty quick. I'm pretty good at it. But if someone else could just do that and it wasn't even on my plate anymore, all of a sudden it freed me up to have bigger blocks of time to just be in a state of flow and do the work that's actually going to move the needle in my business. I also feel like whenever you're at I've noticed for me and my clients that we get to these ceilings in our business where we can scale to a certain point, but it's going to be really tough to scale beyond it without more help. And sometimes you really do need to spend money to make money. So we just hit a point like that recently in our business where we hit a new level financially and growth wise in our business, but we have our sights set on this next level, and we're likely going to be outputting a lot more, and it's going to take a little bit for the money to catch up with that. But it's worth it, because the outsourcing that we're going to do, the people that we're hiring, it will move the needle. So hiring based on what's going to move the needle, not just hiring people for busy work. I think a lot of times we're like, oh, little task, we'll bring in a VA. Well, maybe what you need is an operations director who's going to help you stay on top of the tasks that are actually going to drive things forward, that are going to help you launch monetized, profitable things in your business, not just help you boost your social engagement or send out more emails, answer emails. What are the things that are actually going to drive profit and hire based on those things? So look at the needle moving behaviors where you could use help. Sometimes it's stuff that you're doing but not doing well or fast enough or in the big enough capacity. And sometimes it's things it's like, man, I know I need to be doing this, but I have zero capacity left to do that thing. And bringing someone in to do something totally new that you haven't even touched yet, that is going to be propel you forward.
It's super strategic. The whole approach is super strategic. And I think you're right. A lot of times when it comes time to hire, it's like the first thing is, okay, well, I'm sure I just need a VA, right? Or I need another VA to help me with this busy work. But I love the way you're thinking about it, because a lot of that busy work probably doesn't even need to be done, or maybe it can be automated another
Really.
way. Yeah. So being way more strategic with the hiring. Now, I've got a couple of questions for you that, to me, it's just, these are things that I've noticed you do really well, that I'm sure have contributed to the scaling and growth of your business. And the first thing I want to ask you about is actually your gifting. So I have had the the pleasure and just the fun of being on the receiving end of some of the incredible gifts that you and your team send out. And after I went on your show, I got this, I shared it on my Insta story, but I got this beautiful bottle of rosé that was customized with my picture on it and with the podcast episode on it, which is just so cool. I should have brought it over before we started the interview. I'm looking at it. It's sitting across from me right now, on my little table in the corner of the office. But it was like a real wow experience. And then I received this beautiful terrarium from you in preparation for speaking for your mastermind next week. And so I would, to me, when I think about scaling and growing, a lot of it is, how do we make people feel, whether they're our customers, whether they're our business partners. And then your team has done such a good job of just making me feel really great anytime they're emailing me. So I'm really curious about it. How did you get passionate about this? How did you get good at it? And maybe some tips for those of us as entrepreneurs who are like, okay, we need to step up our gifting and appreciation game, because you're doing well, my friend. So fill us in on your secrets.
It's funny. I've never been asked that, and I never really thought much of it. I guess it's just kind of one of those things that, like, I just watched my mother do that my entire life. Like, go above and beyond for people and show your sincere gratitude for anything that anyone does for you, or when they add value to your life, or even if just their energy or their spirit lifts yours, like, let them know in some way. And I've just watched her be that giver. So I can reverse engineer it for you and tell you some tips that I think could help people, but truly I've never even thought twice about it. Like, this is just in my DNA. And it's a culture we've created in our team that I think is hugely important, because there are a lot of moving parts running two businesses. And thankfully I have a team that is my eyes and ears when I'm like way stressed out and missing things. So like, my team is conditioned now to be like, hey, we noticed so-and-so's grandmother passed away, like a mastermind member's grandmother passed away. And it's like, okay, I'm going to send them flowers. Is that good? Yep. Send them flowers. So we're just they're helping me keep a finger on the pulse, because there are just so many moving parts. But it's really about creating a culture, but it has to be rooted in a belief. Like, it can't just be like, here's our system of sending gifts when so-and-so does such and such. It has to be a belief that this is the right thing to do, and that it's how to make people feel. And in everything I've done it kind of, I don't know, upside down compared to how other people do it. When you look at the network marketing business model, for example, a lot of people look at it from a standpoint of quantity, like, bring in as many people as you can. And I totally took a different approach, thankfully. And I have to credit my mentors for this in all different areas of my life. Taught me it's always quality over quantity. And that's an easy thing to say, but I built a multi-7-figure network marketing business that is a passive income stream by bringing in a fraction of the percentage of people that many other coaches in our company bring in. And I'm earning significantly more because I've put my focus into people. Bring in one person and nurture that person and draw out of that person the best version of themselves and give them everything you've got. That will reward you tenfold versus in bringing 100 people in without paying much attention to them. And it's a lot more exhausting to do the latter, to bring in more people into your business, no matter what kind of business that you run, and say, trying to just like hunt people down and get new people in, versus the people that you have, nurturing them so well, and they become the advocates and the supporters of everything you do. And I remember when one of my mentors told me, you really know you've done it right when people tell you that they would follow you off a cliff, right? Like your people say, like, I would follow you anywhere because of how you've touched their soul in the process of serving them, whether it be someone that you hire or someone that you're serving in your business. And not too long ago, I just had this full circle moment because one of the people that I mentor said, I would literally follow you into battle.
Wow.
And it was just this reminder of like, when you build that trust, when you build that connection, when you serve your people well, when it just becomes a piece of who you are and what you believe to be the right thing to do, it will pay dividends more than you being like, how can I generate more leads? How can I bring in more people? How can I just keep doing this process over and over and spinning my wheels and never taking the time to go deep, and instead always trying to go wide? Go deep with your people, and it will pay off so much more in the long run, both like fulfillment wise and knowing that you're doing the right thing in your business, but also financially.
Yeah. Wow. That was so helpful just to hear your perspective on that. And first to hear how it is just genuinely from the heart. Cause I think you're right. If it's a strategy, if it's not heartfelt, people are going to feel that too. And you'll probably have some wins along the way with it. But if it's not truly coming from a desire just to appreciate that person, then it's not going to be as powerful. But as you were talking, you made me think about, probably, I think for a lot of people listening, like they're spending a lot of money on ads, they're spending a lot of money on marketing. And I think there's a lot of value in that, but it's kind of like, how much are you spending on just loving on and appreciating the people who you're already working with, your current customers, your team? Really, really good mindset shifts here. And here's the other thing that's interesting about what you've done is, these gifts, these tokens of appreciation, they came in a time of, it was like COVID was just starting when I received the wine bottle gift from you. And it was a time when so many people were shrinking back and saying, where can we cut expenses? Understandably, but it was just a totally, you mentioned that you've done things upside down. It was like, this is a 180 from what everybody else is doing right now. And to me, that it was like this impression of you. I was like, gosh, she's so different from everybody else. And I love it. So it's just so you know too, like it makes a big difference and it makes a big impact on the receiving end. So I just want to appreciate you for that and say, like, you and your team have made me feel so great. And I so appreciate that. So one other selfish question, and then I'm going to let you tell people where they can connect with you and how they can get to know you better. So I am really curious about your content, because you have phenomenal content on your blog, on your Instagram. So everybody follow Elizabeth, and she'll share all the places that you can follow her at the end of the podcast. But it's beautiful, it's inspiring. And I noticed in one of your posts, you mentioned that twice a month you have somebody come in to do photos and video for you. So I'm just really curious what your process is with that. Like, are they documenting you throughout the day? And I think that's like, you're really treating your company and your brand seriously as a media company. So I'd love for you to share some of what you do there so that we can model and learn, just learn from you there.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. And this is something that I've done probably for the last year and a half or so. So content kind of stressed me out sometimes because I was like, man, I got to make sure I put up a post and get a blog post up and get a podcast recorded. Like there were just always a lot of moving pieces. So one of the things I started doing was repurposing a lot of my content. So and it just made it easier. So for my podcast, for example, I would film the podcast both on video, obviously strip the audio for the podcast. Then I could use the video and have my video editor chunk it up into some social media posts and YouTube worthy stuff. And then we could get it transcribed and then turn it into a blog post. And then from that blog post, I could create a couple different social media posts. So it was just starting to be a little bit more resourceful with what we already had versus always trying to reinvent the wheel, because a lot of the stuff, like sometimes we say things once and we're like, oh, we can't say it again. We already said it once last month, or we already did a blog post about that, or we already put up a social post about that. But really so few people are hearing it each time. Like, you do kind of have to be a broken record and repeat yourself a little bit and find new ways and new angles to share. And anytime I can share anything through story, I do, because that's what people resonate with. That's what I like sharing. It doesn't feel so stiff to me. It feels like people can get to know me better. And if they resonate with me and my story, that's what will make them, build that trust and bring in the right people. Cause I know I rub some people the wrong way too. So it's, those people aren't my people, and it can kind of quickly, segregate like the people that are not meant to work with me from the people that are. And then the other thing is I do bring in, he's does video and photos. It's been a little tough during COVID. I found someone local to me that I have on retainer, and he comes in twice a month and we just shoot like literally lifestyle stuff. So for video, it's a little more strategic. We have an entire video day. I block off my entire calendar for that day. I actually put myself together in the morning, which is a rarity. And then I have set videos that I'm creating for specific things, whether it be content that goes into my mastermind or my course, whether it be social content for, Instagram or whatever. And then he has a bank of that he edits. We also will shoot a lot of B-roll, because then he can pull the audio from my podcast and put it over some B-roll of like me outside with the kids or me working at my desk or whatever he thinks. I let him take the creative reins on that. That's not my expertise. And then photos, I really try to get more candid stuff, because that's what my tribe resonates with. I noticed it's funny, when I share photos that are clearly a little more posed or professional, I get way less engagement on them. The ones that I snap with my phone of like me and my kids, because that's a big piece of my brand, is that, just simple by nature, real, honest, kind of girl next door kind of brand. But I would also say I know people with a more professional high-end brand, and when they post those candid photos like that they take with their cell phone, they don't do as well as their professional photos because of their audience. So you kind of just have to know your people. So when I do use the photographer, I tell them all the time, just capture what you see versus like, let's sit down here and sit like this, because those just don't do as well for my tribe. And then the biggest, most important piece for content creation for me is block time on my calendar. If it is not on my calendar, it literally does not happen. So, and I have to work in rather large chunks. That's just how my brain works best. So I can get into that creative flow, little breaks within that 4-hour chunk. For example, on a Monday, I'm, just creating content for specific things, mostly writing, because we have the audio already and we have the video, and I let my videographer do that, but it's writing the captions, it's writing the blog posts, different things of that nature. But ever since doing that, it's like taken massive amounts of stress off of me, and it feels more authentic. And really the big thing is just know your people, align your brand with that, and be you. Like, there are so many people doing really great things on social, and I spent so long trying to emulate how they did it, and it felt like pulling teeth as I did it, because it just wasn't me. I didn't know that. I thought like, oh, maybe, I'm just not good at it yet, or I've got it. No, I was trying to write like someone else, or I was trying to speak like someone else. And it wasn't true to who I am. So you've got to be true. You've got to be authentic. People feel it when you're not. And when it comes to content, especially, even if you're writing, like, they are going to literally read between the lines and know that that is just not your spirit, and you're not going to attract your right people when you do it that way.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's the intangible element to it, where I was on a call with some clients earlier this week, and the conversation, like, how do I get more engagement? How do I get more engagement came up. And it was like, if you take a strategy, like yes, there is strategy that you can use where you probably will get more, but if you just take that strategic approach to it, it's still not going to do as well as something that's just heartfelt. Like, that's the it factor, that's the X factor. And so I love that you shared that, because at the end of the day, it's like knowing your people and then just being comfortable with being you online, right? And not trying to model. And I've done it too. We look at people who are doing quote unquote really well, and we're like, okay, well, what's the secret? How are they writing? How are they talking? And it never does well. People can tell. So this has been pure gold. I kept you longer than I told you I was going to keep you, so thank you for just sharing so much wisdom. And I feel like I got a master class in scaling and brand building. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for this. Tell everybody where they can connect with you. I know you've got a great freebie as well, so please tell us all the things and how people can get connected with you further.
Yeah, happy to. So that whole concept of who are you becoming, I created something for my clients that I want to share with your listeners, because I do think it's a pivotal piece in, even if you're listening in like, I just want to know how to scale my business, do this exercise. So I will give you that link that you can share in your show notes and pass along to them, but it's an entire exercise to walk them through that process. And I have the Scaling Up podcast, so come check us out there. We're always going over even more tactical business stuff too over there. And you can catch Elise's amazing episode too. She did one on branding that like blew our minds. Amazing. And if you're curious about different ways that you can connect or work together or just chat, you can come to my website. It's Elizabeth Hartke, HARTKE.com, and check that out. But I hang out on Instagram a lot. I'm just at ELIZ Hartke, HARTKE, and always feel free to drop me a DM or connect. I love chatting with other go-getters and other people. So I would love to hear from you all.
Well, thank you so much for your generosity, for your wisdom. And yeah, I mean, gosh, for you listening, like, please go connect with Elizabeth. Let her know what resonated with you most on this episode, on this interview, because there was so much. I took like 5 pages of notes myself on what you said. So thank you for everything that you shared. And you've changed the way I think about my business and how I'm going to scale. So thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart, and just so good to have you on the show, and really, really just looking forward to continuing to work with you. And I appreciate you, sister. Thank you so much.
Ditto. Thank you for having me on, Elyse.